Hello everyone, my name is Oscar, host of Feed Courage with Lee Wolf, and today I am with
Nadine Mandiau. Nadine Mandiau.
Nadine Mandiau. Thank you for joining us today. And introduce, what do you do for a living?
I am a professional fighter.
Fantastic. And where are you from?
I'm from Belgium originally.
Belgium.
Yep.
Awesome.
I was born and raised there.
Do you have any heroes?
My grandfather.
Why?
I just looked up to him. Like, he did some crazy stuff. Like, he was a para-jumper. He fought in Congo because Belgium, Congo used to be a colony from us. Yeah, that's the right word for it, right?
Yeah.
I'm like trying to think of it in English right now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
no,
oh.
I think it's yeah.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
And I guess there was like two tribes at war, and so he had to go in to get like everybody from Belgium out. And then I think this is when Congo actually became like independent. And so he was in charge of that. And I always loved like his stories. He still had the spears from it. And like, yeah, he had like little memorabilia that I really liked. He taught me how to play pool. He was a coal miner. So he was a very hardworking man. And one thing about it is he was a bad alcoholic when he were younger, like when my aunt and my dad and everybody was younger. And I guess at one point he destroyed the house so bad that my aunt was like, okay, we're gonna leave it all.
In a fit of rage,
Yes.
like he destroyed. Okay.
We're gonna leave it all, because my grandmother was, the perfect housewife, and everything would be cleaned up, and nothing happened the next day. And so my aunt was like, no, we have to leave this. And my grandfather came in the next day, and he freaked out. He's like, what happened? Did somebody come in? Did somebody try to rob us? It's like he was confused. And then my aunt was like, no, this is what happens when you drink. Like, this is you.
He had no recollection.
No. And he never drank again.
Cold turkey.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And I
Is
always
that something that you admire?
Yeah, I definitely admire that. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, those are the stories, you hear like.
Yeah. What is your happiest story that you remember childhood?
I mean, I've got like little glimpses of things, I think, because I used to ride horses. And we would go to the military domain, like right behind the house where we lived. And so it's like loose sand, and it's just for miles and miles and miles. So you could actually race. So I think that would be one of my best memories, is just racing. Yeah, adrenaline. Like, I guess I've always been a little bit of an adrenaline junkie.
Okay.
So just racing, letting my horse go free, just the sound. It's because it's almost quiet, right? Mm-hmm. And smells, and just, I don't know, being outdoors. I love it.
I see. What was the hardest thing for you to do at that age? Was it leaving Belgium? Was it moving out?
Wow. So as a teen, I think it's just hard being a teen, to be honest with you. I'm seeing it now. Right now, I have a younger sister. She's 17, and I'm seeing what she has to go through. And it's just that moment of, finding your identity. And I think I was lucky enough to finish high school, graduate, and everybody was going to college or doing their own thing. My parents just got divorced. So, my mom had a boyfriend, dad had a girlfriend, everybody was kind of on their own life. So leaving wasn't the hardest thing. And for me, it was really nice because I got to find my own identity, and I think as a teen, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to do things. And I think that was what always, worried me. Like, that was what always, like, I could never really fit in anywhere, and I didn't want to, but I did. And
did you go through phases? Like, did you have like a goth phase?
Yeah.
What kind of phases did you have?
Goth face.
You had a goth phase. Okay.
Yeah, like it was more metal. But so yeah, grunge metal. I was more like the ripped jeans, dark makeup. Yeah. Dark t-shirts, like a Nirvana shirt or something. And then my friends were more goth, like the boots and yeah.
And what was the next phase you had?
After that, modeling. That was funny, actually. Yeah. I went from kind of that to doing like little modeling gigs when I was 17. I think. Yeah, I did like a model of the year contest and stuff in our town.
You won a model of the year contest?
No, I didn't win it. I was a late bloomer, so my body did not look model worthy next to the other girls. Let me put it that way. I was 17. 17, yeah. And at 17, I see this guy with tattoos and drives a Mustang and American Georgia Southern boy, and I was like, oh my God, open my door for me? I'm like, what are you doing? So yeah, I followed him, and
I see.
It didn't last. I think one thing, I was way too young. We were way too different, and just kind of like, what happened? I ended up being too stubborn to go home. So
why?
I hate being a failure, and I didn't. My family had a really hard time with me leaving, and so.
But you still did it anyway.
Yes, and so everything I did, because for instance, I put myself through college, because my dad was just basically like, this is your journey. This is you wanted this, so you can do this. So everything I paid for my own car, my very first car. I put myself through college. I did everything. I had 3 jobs at one point while going to college, and I just didn't want to go back home and prove them right. So I was like, no, I can do this on my own. And so again, 3 jobs, and oh my God, there's definitely some stories there that I could tell you.
Sounds like it, yeah.
I wanted to earn things the right way. I wanted to be, everything that I have is because of what I did. And that's also why it was very easy for me to not take things from my parents, or I wanted to be like, oh, okay, fine, I don't need you.
You're divorced, and then you said that you gained some weight, and that was challenging for you.
Yeah.
Why?
I think one thing is also because of my family. My family is very much, my parents are very much, being fat for them is considered being lazy. They have that notion, right? So, and so if somebody is a little overweight, they're very quickly to comment about it. Like I said, my family is a little, and I'll be honest about it, narrow-minded. If they ever see this, they'll probably hate me for it because you keep that within the family. But they definitely have their views on things. And I think for me, as a teenager, I had a lot of problem with my weight too. I don't know. I was just ugly duckling, I guess. I don't know, because I was just weird. I think I was just weird. I've always been different. And a part of me wants to be different. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to fit in, but you do. I don't want to fit in, but I want to be accepted. There you go. That's the right way to say it.
Or respected.
Yeah, respected. Yeah.
I think respect is important.
So one of the many jobs that I had was bartending. So, which is actually funny. I bartended before I was 21. Sorry. But with that comes, and it was college bars, right? So with that comes a lot of drinking yourself, very unhealthy lifestyle. After work, after everybody's gone to Waffle House or IHOP, and I wasn't working out. I was living a very unhealthy lifestyle. And that's when I was definitely getting some more chunk.
Sure.
And I started realizing okay, I need to do something. I need to get healthier. I need to do something.
What triggered that?
A picture of me at the beach. I remember seeing a picture of me at the beach with friends, and it was, she actually took an actual picture, had it printed out and then got it, old school, I guess, is now what you can call that.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, and I remember seeing it. I remember looking at it, and I'm like, oh my God, is that me? Because when I gain weight, it goes all here. I have very skinny legs. I always have skinny, long legs. But it was just all here and very unproportionate. So very unattractive in that way, or I think, so. But I also have to admit, like, my weight is still something I struggle with till this day. I think that's maybe if it is a female quality, if it's, I don't know if it's because of my parents, if it's because anything like that, but I can still, I mean, even with last time when we did a photo shoot, remember, I wanted it to be closer to my fight because
Yeah.
that way I would look better because I feel like, oh, I'm cutting weight.
Yeah.
Like I look lean.
Yeah.
So I think in my head, that's still, it's always going to be like an issue in that sense.
You saw the picture and that made a transformation.
Yeah, because I think I was getting some kind of, we can call it respect, popularity, right? Because I was a new kid and a foreign kid and whatever. But then I wasn't realizing that I was letting myself go with that, you know, and then seeing the picture and seeing like, okay, like this is not you either. As a kid, I was interested in martial arts. I think I did karate for like 2 months. And like I always thought it was cool, but it's not that big of a, or I guess where I'm from, it wasn't that big of a thing to do, right? So being able to actually go to a gym and hit a bag and everything like that seemed really appealing to me, like learning and letting out that frustration. I think letting a lot of my anger out, because I think I did have a lot of anger at that time.
What were you angry at?
Oh my God, angry at just the way that my life had turned out, right? So I'm in this strange country and I'm by myself and I'm too stubborn to go back home or take help from anybody. I had to like take a semester off of school because I couldn't pay for it, for instance. Like it took me 6 years to get my college degree because
you had a lot of weight on you, you know, all that. I see.
Yeah.
Just frustrated.
So yeah, I was just and mad because the relationship that I was in, it ended because partially, like I said, I was young, but also he cheated on me, and so I found that out before we moved to the States. But I don't like to quit. I don't like to give up. And I'm like, love conquers all. And I was like, we can make this, you know, this was when we first started dating. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, I thought I could let all that go. And I couldn't. I was too young to really deal with all those emotions. And then being stuck in a different world, you know, with him and still certain behaviors that were happening that I was like, okay, this is not right. Like, I don't want this for the rest of my life. This is not okay. I should not be dealing with this for the rest of my life. Well, so like I was saying, I started the gym in Georgia and I came within the culture, the MMA culture, right? Like all the fighters there. And one thing that I loved about it, and I think that's why when people ask me about Georgia and the South, and, you know, if people are always like, aren't they like super racist or super conservative? You know, like that's the first thing a lot of people ask me. But I was at a gym where everybody from any kind of social class, you know, like I had friends who used to be in a gang and I would laugh at them because they were my friends. And I would be like, don't tell me you were the idiot throwing up gang signs in the club. And they'd be like, shut up, Nadine. And I would just, you know, like we would mess with each other about that. But you also had lawyers and you also had doctors and like.
It's interesting that in the ring or the mat, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you know, poor or whatever structure, like. It's you're disciplining your body and
So this is your tribe now, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a lot of the guys that I trained with were all like, they were my big brothers. Like I knew they would have my back no matter what. And then I ended up actually eventually teaching there too. I started teaching the cardio kickboxing class, the one that I originally started the gym with. And so I had a lot of girls, like it was for the women's cardio kickboxing. So like teen girls and like, again, people from any kind of like background. And I loved it. There was that
community.
There was that community. And so I never had that issue.
It feels like you found a spot where you were accepted.
I felt right. Yeah.
You were looking for that. And this is.
And that was it. It was at the time I graduated college and I don't know, being around the guys who were fighters and going to all the fights. And we went to different states, you know, we would go to South Carolina to go support them. And it was just such, I don't know. It's like you said, I felt like I fit in, right? Like it felt right. And I was like, I want to fight one day. That was all it was. It was supposed to be like a bucket list thing. Like, I just want to do it one time. Just want to know what it feels like. Because I had also never been in a fight before. People ask me that all the time. Like, oh, you must have fought a lot as a kid. I've never gotten into a physical, other than accidentally headbutting a kid that was pulling my hair one day.
That was it.
That was it. I had never gotten into any.
So tell me about the very first time you got punched in the face.
Oh my God. Was it? Walked into Victory MMA and Tony Palafox was there, and I told him, I was like, I wanna, because I just got my job. I was like, I wanna fight. I wanna have an MMA fight. And he put me in with some of the guys, and he's like, all right, let's go. And I remember getting like hit in the face, and I remember having a black eye for the very first time, and I was like, oh
so
my.
you put you with a guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like Coach Tony has always been like, and I love that about him. He's always like, once you're on the mat, like you're not, I'm a girl, or like you're a fighter. So you come here and where everybody gets treated the same, right? And yeah, it was Nick Battis. You have had the pleasure of doing a photo shoot with him. Nick
I'm
Battis.
actually interviewing him like next week.
He gave him a first black eye.
Nick Battis gave you a black eye.
Yeah, I believe it was.
What a gentleman, Nick.
I know. I'm like, was that my?
No, it's cool.
Was it the first?
He's a gentleman.
One? But oh no, he absolutely is. But it was funny. I think that was my first time. I think that was my first like wake up call. And it was also for Tony because he's like, okay, this girl has no striking. So it took me another year of training and focusing, because I'd only been focusing on jiu-jitsu and the cardio kickboxing, which was just teaching girls how to throw jabs 100 times.
Yeah.
And,
Very
like,
interesting.
you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, he had me, as I was having my big girl job, I worked in a staffing agency. I would come in at 5:30 in the morning. He would train me, and then I would go shower at 6:30, get ready, and as again in a staffing agency, so I had to look presentable because I would meet with businesses, I would interview people, and then right after work at 4:30, I would drive back to the gym and go train. And it took me another year before I had my first amateur fight.
Wow!
And I loved it. I loved it. I loved the feeling.
The first fight.
I don't know. This was another thing that I was just like, I want to try it. I want to know what it's like. I want to experience it. And I want to know what it's like to fight to punch somebody with my fist. Because again, like I wasn't a fighter growing up. I'd never gotten into any fights. MMA was the first time that I got into this, and it was like, I want to know what it feels like. So let's do it.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a brawl. It was a straight up brawl. I went my very first round. I stayed somewhat technical, but technique went out the window pretty fast.
Tell me about the moment you're stepping into the ring. What's your mindset? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
I love it because I'm a person I always say my mind goes 500 miles an hour in 500 different directions. And when I'm getting ready to fight, it stops. So when I am walking to that cage, like nothing else matters anymore. There's no other thoughts. I'm not thinking about 500 other different things. This is it. This is what is in front of me. And I think that's why after my first fight, I was like, I love this. Like there was no thinking, right? It was just doing. And I don't know, it's just the adrenaline again and everything that came with it. That's what I fell in love with. And I fell in love. And that's also one of the reasons why I fell in love with jiu-jitsu.
I see. Because,
in jiu-jitsu, you're worried about somebody choking you. You're not worried about, a bill that you have to pay tomorrow. Or, if you're not going to have enough food at the end of the week to
It's very interesting because what I'm getting from this is you mentioned like many people of our generation, anxiety, depression. And most of those things are internal thoughts. It's very internalization. But you're going to a fight and all of that just goes away because I think your mind and your body goes into fight or flight.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that you find peace is what I'm understanding.
And that,
peace in the violence that you're going into.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's interesting because that's the one thing that I do struggle with right now, that I always have to. I'm still trying to figure out what to do, but right after a fight, I tend to go back into a depression. Like, it's very easy for me to fall back into a depression after a fight because I don't have anything lined up. I don't have, like, I don't have the reason to wake up in the morning to go to the gym. I don't have the reason to not be in bed all day. Does that make sense?
It does. It sounds like purpose. Because everything before led into that moment, and it was about you, and it was about the fight. And now that it's over, it's like,
and so I'm like, oh, I'm still going to train, because I still stay disciplined. It's all about discipline. I'm still going to train. I'm still going to be there every day, but I'm not going to put as much effort in it because I don't want to burn out. I think that I fear the most, like, what is my next step? I think I have to, like, I'm very aware. I'm 31 right now, right? And happily married. And Andy and I have talked about kids. And this is something like, okay, if I want to do this and I want to accomplish the big things that I want to accomplish, right? What I think I'm destined for, this is the time. But what if it's not? What if this isn't my path to take, and I should just go ahead and have kids? I should just settle. I need to stop always going for the next thing while I already have so much great stuff in my life, right? So I'm like, maybe I should just be okay with this, but I want more. And I'm also like, when is it enough? And so I think that's like my biggest fear is like, okay, how long are we going to keep doing this? Because Andy's like, oh, you can fight after you have kids. I don't know if I want to do that. I want to be dedicated to my kids. That's when I said earlier that I'd been thinking about what I fear the most. That's my biggest fear right now, is having kids.
Why?
I'm terrified of messing them up. It sounds a lot darker than it is, I feel like, but I don't value my life enough to breathe it into another person, like to have somebody else, to give somebody else life. And I know that sounds very, it's just when I go back, I've been through a lot. I've had a lot of great experiences throughout life, and a lot of them have also been down, and the kids, yeah. And so I'm afraid of having, bringing a kid into this world. And what if I'm not a good parent? What if I'm not good enough? Everybody always tells me, and being a kids coach, like, oh, you're so good with them. You're going to be such a great mom. And I'm terrified because what if I'm not? Like, what if I think what I do is like, I want to look at it that way. I look at it as in my parents, what they tried their best, right? That's what you do as a parent. You try your best at your capabilities. And they did. But I ended up like this. And I'm not saying that it's their fault, because I also think it's partially like what we are, as a family, like genetics and stuff. But then I'm like, then how is it fair to keep that going?
Compared to what?
Oh, somebody like Andy. Like Andy, like if my mind is going 500 miles an hour, 500 different directions, and I ask him, what are you thinking about? And he said, nothing. It blows my mind. Like, to have that kind of peace as a person, and just like, I don't know. It's a hard thing to, I think that's my biggest struggle right now, is like figuring out one thing, like what I want to do with fighting, and what it's going to take to get where I want to be, and what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to reach to? And can I do that before the time that I can be a parent? Because if I fight for another 5 years, what if then it's too late? What if I can't have kids anymore? I'm at that stage right now where I feel like it's a decision I have to make. And I think I'm terrified. I'm more terrified of having my own child than doing another bare knuckle fight. I am down to have another bare knuckle fight. Let's go. I'll show you what I look like after my bare knuckle fight.
Let's talk about your bare knuckle fight.
I'll do it again.
So you had it before bare knuckle fight. Tell me about that experience.
Oh my gosh, it was different. After the first round, I remember going to the corner and there was an actual chunk missing out of my lip. And I don't know how. I think maybe because of like my teeth or something. There was a chunk missing out of my lip, and that's where my blood was coming from. Because I knew I was like, I'm bleeding, but I'm not cut. And so that was already like kind of irritating me. And then I know like she hit my nose a few times, so my eyes were starting to swell. But then also like, I guess just technique went out the window, right? Like I said, it became a brawl. Like it was just like, I got hit and I'm like, all right, like we'll go for it. So it was just like full on. We got fight in the night, which was cool. But I don't know. It's people ask me that. They're like, does it hurt? And it doesn't at that moment, right? It
I
hurts
hear
the
that a
next
lot.
day.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Well, this was the first time that I was in the 4th round. I didn't want to fight anymore because my hands were hurting so much. I had like Mickey Mouse hands. I swear to God, they were so. And my coach was telling me straight punches, and I do not want to hit a hard surface anymore. I'm like, can I go to the body? I did not want to hit. Like my hands hurt so bad, and I was like, this is the first time during a fight that I noticed what is hurting. And I'm like, I gotta push through. So it definitely taught me a lot about myself. Because I did really well the first 2 rounds. And then the 3rd round, it got switched around. And then the 4th round, it was kind of like even. And then I was able to get the last round. So it was a split decision, like a majority decision. Mm-hmm. But I got rocked in the 3rd round. And this was the very first time I think I ever got rocked like that I was like, oh, like everything's shaking, everything's moving, like it was that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I got to keep going. Mm-hmm. And just knowing that I can do that I can endure that I can, and still come out victorious, that was a great feeling to have. And I think that has helped me now. It's helping me regain my confidence. I think I lost my confidence a little bit after some of the losses, and I'm getting it back now. And I think that was, what was obvious in this last fight, like just that I'm more confident now, that I trust myself more. And I think the bare knuckle thing was just kind of like it needed to happen. It was a necessary thing, right?
So how did you look like after the fight? Oh, wow. Oh, shit. If I'm going to show you too. I don't think I can focus here.
Oh my God.
Oh, right there.
So can you imagine having to go through the airport the next day with Andy?
You show your passport and this is you. Wow.
Yeah. My kids were, the first few seconds were like, whoa. And then it was fine. They kind of like, it's coach. They watched the fight, which is also crazy. I saw
some B-roll of people like
celebrating. Just like cheering for it. And so they were kind of like, I don't know, they've seen me with a black eye or like anything before, so it's coach. Mm. But the funny part was that like in jiu-jitsu after the match, right? The 2 competitors, you go and shake the other person's coach's hand. So I had these little kids that didn't know me and never seen me before just walk up like terrified. And I'm like, it looks a lot worse than it is. At first I had like my beanie on and my sunglasses, but then I'm trying to like coach with sunglasses indoor and I'm like, this is stupid. Like
you see the
yeah.
How long does that take to heal?
It actually didn't take that long. It was like 3 weeks. So, and thanks to a few of the moms, right? And my friends. One of my friends shipped a bunch of like ice packs, like face ice packs in my house. One of the moms of a kid that I teach, she was explaining me arnica.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah. So she's like, you need to boil it, then put the.
Is there any money involved in this? Like if you win, or is it worth it?
So that's the thing for this one, and that's something that we've talked about, like my coaches and I, because my coaches and like they would rather me not ever do that again, right? And look like that. Definitely not my head coach, but I think if the money is right, we would do it again, but not for that money that I made that time.
So it was more for the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got that.
Yeah,
You're done. You
for
can do it.
sure, for sure. Like I never cared if I had a black eye or anything, right? I've never like with fighting, with training, and I think within the last couple of years, I've been having to deal with my past, like we explained earlier. Like I have been having to deal with it a lot more and having to process things. And I remember at one point where I had a mark on my face that looked very similar to somebody that I loved, that was hurt by somebody else that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I felt like, I just remember like the way people look at me, and I'm like, oh, it's fine, I'm a fighter. But I'm like, what if you're not? You know, like people would see her and be like, oh, what happened? And you have to make up this story. You know, you can't be like, oh, my husband hit me. Yeah. So it's, and I would make jokes about that. Like Andy and I would go somewhere and I'll be like, oh, I'll just flinch or something. And then I realized like how awful I was for making those jokes. And I don't know, just realizing that. So looking like that afterwards, that was, I think, mentally the hardest part. Because I don't care if I knew I was going to heal. So for me to look that way, it's not for me to be like, oh my God, I look like that's not, I don't care about that. Yeah. It was just what people were thinking about when they looked at me. And I'm just kind of like realizing like the reality of it, like what it could be for some people. You know, it was really weird. I never really cared about fighting. And if my mom was like, oh my God, I'm like, whatever, Mom, it's fine. Right. And then now I'm like thinking about it. Like if it was my kid, oh my God, like looking like that. I'm like, oh my God. I did not show that to my mom.
Oh.
I did not show. I did not show like those. But there was a reason I didn't post those online. Not because I don't like care what other people, like people be like, oh, okay. Like you got, it was just how, So
where are you going? What's next? You won your fight.
So I won my fight. I actually did sign a contract with them. So, in the pay in the contract is what I would want it to do with gloves, what I would be completely fine with. Bare knuckle, that would be another story. But I think what I would really want to do before having kids is, I want to at least even out my MMA record. Right? Because right now I have more losses than wins. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to tell my kid that. I don't want to be the mom. I don't know. I don't want to have that. I don't want to have that legacy. I want to have a legacy that I'm proud of and I can tell them, right? So that's now really cool with the bare knuckle. Like, oh, I've done bare knuckle before. Yeah. And then the bare knuckle with gloves is called trigon combat. It's the very first time ever done, like in a triangle, right? And so it's like, that's a part of my legacy. Like those are cool things. It's not changing my MMA record, but those are things that are,
I see.
Like that's just like a personal thing. But well, I guess it's all personal. And then I told my coach within the next year, so before next summer, I want another belt. So as an amateur, I was able to get the 115 tough enough belt, and so which is considered like the world title for them for amateur, and I had that at amateur level, and now I want a belt at pro level, and so that's kind of like what I want to set what I want to set my eyes on, right? Awesome. Because when I first started but when I first started fighting and I decided I wanted to keep fighting, I'm like, I'm going to be in the UFC in 2 years, you know, like, no. And COVID, no. Like, so I'm realizing now, like, how much it takes and how long it takes and having more reasonable goals. And I think the belt, since we've had certain MMA promotions already reach out to us for like title fights, I think it's possible. I remember when I was 19, I had somebody tell me that nothing easy is ever worth it. And that's always stuck with me, right? And it is, and it's shown. Like, I guess I've never wanted the easy way out. I've always wanted the hard part, but it's also because that's what's going to be worth it to me. And so I think as a teenager, I wanted it to be easier, right? I wanted it to be easier, and I don't think I would have been happy with myself if things were that easy, if I was that plain Jane, stayed in a little town, had a little teaching job, and like I think the things that have happened is my search for my happiness, and I'm going towards that direction, right? And that's what I'm trying to. That's my goal. My goal is to find that happiness within, so I can give it, and I don't have it yet. So before I can give it, before I can have kids, before I can move on, like, I want to be able to tell that 16, 17-year-old girl that it's going to be a while. It's going to take its time, but it's going to be worth it. And you're going to have a lot of crazy stories to tell. And hopefully a lot of, like I said, advice is taken whenever it's, the right time. But I think being an example is the biggest thing, right? Like, that's why I wanted to be a teacher. My teachers were big examples to me. Mm-hmm. That's why my grandfather was my hero. He led by example. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you have to go through certain things, or you have to have been a leader, right? You have to have had that trial and error to be able to lead by example and get to that point. And that's what you've wanted, and that's what you're going to do. And I love teaching the kids, and that's the thing where I am with that decision of kids and fighting, is just kind of like, I don't want to be the parent that resents their kids. I don't want to resent my kids and be like, oh, it's because of you that I wasn't able to do this. Right? I want to be able to completely dedicate myself to my kids. And maybe that's not the right thing to do as a parent either, right? You don't know. You might mess them up that way too, which you do. And
what I find about anxiety and the fear that we have inside ourselves is that we make a world that it's going to be like this. We make a map. This is how it's going to be. And then
that's true.
When you're outside and it really happens, like, it's something completely different,
and we always turn out, right? I mean,
and you're going to brawl in that. Right? Yeah, you're going to brawl. You have all this technique. You can read all the parenting books, and you can practice with kids by coaching them, but nothing prepares you, because you transform as a person when you become a parent. Yeah. But that's your next level, and God willing, it does help. Yeah. But we'll follow Nadine's career very closely. It's something very admirable, and the kids love you. You have a great gym in San Diego Combat Academy.
Yes. And
where can people find you, see your fights, your upcoming fights?
My Instagram at Too Much Mandiau MMA. That might be, so it's the number 2 and then much and then just MAN, and it will come up.
I'll put them in the description below, so people want that.
Okay.
But thank you so much for your story. Thank you for sharing with us. And we'll see you on your next journey. We'll have another interview. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.